We're here today to talk about CloudExtend Excel Analytics for NetSuite and how you can integrate it with Excel Power Query and Excel Power Pivot, and also use it to link multiple NetSuite saved searches together across many levels. CloudExtend Excel Analytics for NetSuite allows users to see and run their NetSuite saved searches directly from Excel and even put them on a schedule. Now, simply seeing and running your saved searches in Excel already opens up an entirely new way to analyze and visualize your data. And for many of you, this is going to be good enough. Other users may want to take it to another level with Excel Power Query and Power Pivot. What is Power Query? There's many definitions. Mine is that it is a business intelligence tool available directly in Excel that allows you to import data from many different data sources and then clean, transform, and reshape your data as needed, all repeatable with one click. Power Pivot allows you to perform powerful data analysis and create sophisticated data models. And with Power Pivot, you can also mash up large volumes of data from various sources and perform instant analysis rapidly and then share those insights easily. Users can build a data model that integrates data from multiple tables, or in our case, multiple NetSuite saved searches, effectively building a relational data source inside an Excel workbook that doesn't really have a size limitation. Excel has a size limitation of 1 million rows, but with Power Pivot, you can have millions of rows. Now, there's a few times when I would recommend using Power Query and Power Pivot. So one would be when you needed to link multiple data sources or saved searches together. In the Excel world, in order to do this, you would create a VLOOKUP and then bring in values from other tables, increasing the size of a workbook, slowing things down. With Power Query, it's really easy to link those together based on common key fields. If you need to automate the cleansing and data transformation, you can do this as well. You'd also use it if you want to protect the integrity of your source data and keep it separate from the analysis. It's a real easy way to share your data source with others. Also, if you're adding more columns to your table, say a calculated column on your table or some formula column on your table, well, when CloudExtend Excel Analytics for NetSuite runs, that table is getting overwritten, so that column will ultimately be removed during a refresh. You can avoid this when you use Power Query to make a transformation and add those columns after it's imported. Also, as I mentioned, working with large data sets that Excel can't natively handle. And I really like this one. You could add watch folders. So in other words, you might have a folder in SharePoint, and every time a new file gets added there, then they'll be added to the existing data model. A good use case here might be someone who has a large number of sales orders. So say 800,000 sales orders in January, 750,000 in February, 1 million in March, etc. You simply put a watch on that folder with Power Query, and when the March sales orders roll in and then the April sales orders roll in, they'll all get added to your data model without any need to worry about the size limitations. So let's go ahead and see it in action. So with Power Query, your first step is to create your data source. So in this example, I'm going to use one workbook, and I'm going to have multiple tables inside that workbook representing each NetSuite saved search. Your use case might vary. You could have a separate workbook for each of your saved searches if you want. You could also, as I mentioned, consolidate multiple workbooks with Power Query. But I'm going to go ahead in this scenario and I'm going to bring in a number of saved searches that I have in my NetSuite account. So let's first take a look at how I've constructed the result of this saved search. Because I use these results in both native Excel and with Power Query, I do have some information that I'm keeping up here that I could ultimately remove if I wanted to. In this case, like the name of the customer, the sales rep, etc., because those are all referenced down here. So I'm pulling in the sales rep from the employee database, the customer internal ID, subsidiary internal ID, item, etc. So there's a number of information up here that could be removed, and you could remove that in your saved search now, or you could remove it later in Power Query by removing columns. But the key thing I want to point out here is that I am referencing the records internal ID here, and I have a naming convention that I use. So in this case, this is the record name followed by ID. So sales order ID is the ID for the internal ID for this particular sales order. And then down at the bottom of the search, I put in all my related records. So in this case, the customer internal ID, subsidiary internal ID, item ID, class ID, named in the same fashion. So let's go ahead now and open up CloudExtend Excel Analytics for NetSuite. I'm in Excel. I'm going to go to Analyze NetSuite Data. Now I'm already authenticated in. I'm going to go ahead and click Start from Scratch, and I'm going to start bringing in some of my saved searches. So when I click on Add Report, that really means, add a saved search from NetSuite. So I use a naming convention for my saved searches as well. I start them all with CEAN. So in this case, I'm going to start looking for customers first. I'm going to bring in my saved search for customers. And then I also want to queue up one for employees. And so on. So I'm just going to go ahead and now I'm going to look for non-inventory items, another saved search that I want to use. Okay, so now I've got all 9 of my searches here. I'm going to go ahead and click on Next. We are going to add these to a schedule, but because I haven't yet saved this workbook, I need to save it first to SharePoint or OneDrive before I actually create the schedule. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Skip for now. And I can preview these. So if I want to get a quick preview of what the customer search is going to look like, I can click that preview icon. Looks good to me, so I'll go ahead and close this. And I know the other ones all look good as well, so I'm going to click on Create here. Now this is going to run all 9 of these saved searches, and it's going to create a separate table inside of Excel for each one of these saved searches. So my workbook here contains a number of different worksheets, and on each worksheet, CloudExtend builds a table and gives it the name of the saved search. And you can see up in column A1 that we're also putting in the name of the saved search there, and we're also giving the worksheet name the name of the saved search as well. So now that we have this source data here in Excel, we don't want to touch it again. We don't want to actually touch this file. So I'm going to go ahead and put all of these searches on a schedule. So we'll go to Schedule here, and we're going to create a new schedule first. So some of these we want to update on a daily basis. So I'm going to create one that runs, let's say, at 11:11 p.m. or 11:11 a.m. Actually, let's edit that because I really want to make that run in the morning. So let's click the little clock icon, and let's set this to run at 1:11 a.m. So we haven't added any searches to this schedule yet, but we will in a moment. And we're going to create another schedule here. And we want to have another schedule run weekly every Sunday at, let's say, 11:11. That should be fine on Sundays. And now we're going to go to Assign Reports. And we want to have the customer search update daily. We want to have the employee search update daily. The item search can update weekly. GL accounts weekly. The list of subsidiaries can be updated weekly. Outstanding invoices daily. Opportunities daily. Sales orders daily. And let's say employee logins could also be updated daily. So I'll go ahead and click Save Changes. Now in the background, there's a search being assigned to each one of these schedules, and they'll run and they'll update this workbook that's sitting inside of your SharePoint at the specific times. So at this point, I do want to point out one thing, and that is notice that this login date here is still set in Excel format. So every time CloudExtend runs, because this was an error that was made in the save search, so intentionally, by the way, just so I can show this to you, we'd either have to go fix this inside of NetSuite, but I'm going to use this as an example later during the transformation so we can show that how we can fix this with Power Query so it's permanently fixed every time the data is brought in for analysis. So at this point, we can go ahead and close this Excel workbook. And now we're going to create a new one. And this is where Power Query and Power Pivot are going to come in. So let's first create a blank workbook. Let's go ahead and save it as well. So we'll save it to the same folder. And we'll call it CloudExtend Power Query Analysis. So the first thing I'm going to do here is click on the Data tab, and I'm going to choose Get Data from File and from Workbook. And in this case, I'm going to choose the source data file that we just referenced. And notice there's a number of other places I can get data from as well. So I can get it from a SQL server, from other online services, etc. But because CloudExtend Excel Analytics for NetSuite populates an Excel workbook, this is where I'm going to get our data from. And I'm pulling it in from a workbook that lives on SharePoint. Now I'll get a list of all of the tables at the top here and all of the worksheets. It's best to choose tables. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. I'm going to go ahead and select every one of these tables. Okay, so now that all 9 tables are selected, I'm going to go ahead and click on Transform Data. And this is going to give me a chance to look at the data formats and make sure everything looks okay. And again, this is a one-time process. So once I do this, it's all memorized as steps in the data import. So here are all the queries that were created. And on the right-hand side here, you can see the different steps. So this is a list of all the tables and the worksheets, and here is where it went ahead and selected the table and brought in the data. And then it went in and it changed a number of different data types. So it went through and it looked at this column and assigned it a numeric value. Same thing for account number. One thing you'll notice, if we go to the employee login, remember we saw that one that had some issues with the date format in the save search that we created. So in this case, the login date is still a numeric value. Well, we can fix that permanently moving forward just by coming to Transform, and we can choose Date. And we're going to add another step. By adding another step, we keep all those existing transformations, and then we add one more transformation where we convert this numeric value to a date. If they look good, we're going to go ahead and click Close and Load To. And in this case, I'm going to only create a connection, and I'm going to choose Add This to the Data Model. Now, by only creating a connection, it means that I'm always going to be referencing that original data source, and I'm not going to be storing any data inside of this Excel workbook. So this is going to keep the file size down. It's going to make the pivot calculations fairly fast. I'll go ahead and click on OK. So here you can see all of the data is being loaded into some memory here, so we can actually start creating some relationships and then start building pivot tables off it. But it's not actually stored inside the file permanently. So now the next thing we want to do is start building the relationships between each one of these save searches. Now I have a fair number of save searches on here. Your relationships might be a little bit smaller, but let's go ahead and click on the Manage Data Model. Next, I want to click on Diagram View. And here I can see a list of all of those tables. Now this is going to be a little bit messy at first. What we want to do is separate these into what are called dimension tables and then fact tables. So fact tables in NetSuite terms are really going to be, say, transactions. So opportunities, sales orders, that employee login table that I mentioned. And the dimension tables are things that you might want to aggregate those tables by. So for sales by customer, so the customer table would be a dimension table. So I'm going to go ahead and put these into dimension tables and fact tables with my dimension tables at the top. Okay, so now that I've got my dimension tables at the top and my fact tables at the bottom, it's time to start creating relationships. So I have an employee ID, and I'm going to look at the employee login audit trail, and I'm going to match up the employee ID here with the employee ID on the login audit trail record. Next, I have opportunities, and in this case, I have the employee ID named as sales rep ID, but that's okay. I can still create this relationship because in NetSuite, the sales rep ID is coming from the employee record. I also have some outstanding invoices, and there I can also relate the employee record to the outstanding invoices, and also the same thing for sales orders. And remember, I can just scroll right to the bottom to see where I want to link to because that's the way I structured my save search. So I'll go ahead and link that to the sales rep ID. Now next I have items. So items are going to show up in 2 places. So they're going to show up inside of my opportunity save search. And they're also going to show up inside of the NetSuite save, the sales order save search. So let's go ahead and take the item ID and link it there as well. And then we have customers. So customer ID is going to link to customer ID in the opportunity search. It's also going to link to customer ID in the outstanding invoices. And it's going to link to customer ID in sales orders. Okay, and it looks like I can actually link item ID to my outstanding invoices as well. In case I wanted to look at, for some reason, outstanding invoices by item sold. I'd be able to do something like that as well. And I'm going to do the same thing with subsidiaries. So subsidiaries I can associate with each one of these, I believe. So let's go ahead and link the subsidiary to outstanding sales orders or outstanding invoices. And we'll do the same for sales orders. And I'm going to leave the GL accounts out of it for now, but if I were to be building an income statement and along with these transactions, then I'd also want to link these GL accounts to the specific transactions as well. So that should be enough for me to get started. We might have to come back here and add or modify some relationship, but let's go ahead and save this. And then we'll close it. Okay, so now we're ready to start analyzing our data. So I'm going to do that with a pivot table. I'm going to click on Insert, Pivot Table, and here we'll use the workbook's data model because we don't have any data actually stored inside of the workbook. And where do we want to place it? Let's go ahead and place it right here. I'll go ahead and click on OK. And here you're going to see that rather than what you're used to seeing in a pivot table, which is the ability to add fields from one table only, now you can see we've got a whole number of tables that we can start working with. So let's go ahead, let's start analyzing sales orders. So we know we're going to want to look at amount. So I'm going to drag amount over to the values field. And we also want to analyze by date. So I'm going to drag date over as a column. And you'll see how Power Pivot is going to automatically summarize these dates into years, quarters, and months. And next we want to see who the sales rep is. So we're going to navigate to that employee table that we actually linked through the employee ID. So I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to bring name over as a row. And let's just go ahead and format these numbers so they'll look a little bit nicer. We'll put them in a currency format. Click OK. And now we have sales by rep. And we can pretty quickly just copy this pivot table. And let's bring this pivot table here. We'll drop it in here. And instead of sales by rep, so I'm going to go ahead and remove the name from the row, we might want to look at customers. So we can come here, we can drop in customer name. And here we have sales by rep, and we have sales by customer, and we can actually bring in item as well. So let's go ahead and paste in another piece to the pivot table. We'll drop this in, and we're going to go ahead and remove the sales rep, and we're going to go ahead and add in something from the item. So we'll go ahead and add in the item name. So now we have 3 pivot tables, all based on a number of different record types in NetSuite linked together through Power Query. From here, I can even add in some slicers. So let's go ahead and add a slicer here. Let's select the pivot table, go to Insert, and then Slicer. And now I can choose a slicer from any number of these different tables that are on here, either the active ones or others as well. So let's say we want to start looking at sales by subsidiary. So I can just locate the subsidiary table. And I can choose name as a slicer. Now, one thing you're going to notice first is that when I click on the subsidiary, the only pivot table that's changing here is the one that I created the slicer off of. So in order to change that, I just want to go to Report Connections, and now I want to go ahead and associate the slicer with the other all three pivot tables. So I'll go ahead and click on OK. And now when I make a change, when I unfilter the pivot table, you can see we're getting all the subsidiaries. If I want to filter it to just Tesla East, click on that. And you can see that we're filtering every one of these pivot tables based on just that Tesla East subsidiary. So let's do one more model with, let's take a look at opportunities. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in create another pivot table. So go to Insert, Pivot Table, and let's drop it right here. Click OK. And now we're going to start working with opportunities. So the first thing we're going to want to do is drop in the date. And then we want to look at the weighted total. So this is the total that is projected. And then we can bring in a number of other things. We could look at opportunities by sales rep. We could look at opportunities by item. So let's go ahead and first look at it by sales rep. So we're going to go ahead and drag in the sales rep here. And again, let's just go ahead and fix this number format with 1 decimal place. Okay. So this is interesting to look at, but we can make this more interesting by adding some more slicers and actually looking at some other ways to slice and dice the opportunities. So let's do it with something similar. We're going to go ahead and copy and paste this table. And in this case, instead of looking at it by sales rep, we also want to look at the opportunities by item. So let's come over here and look at the items. Drop in the item name. And now we want to add a slicer. So we can see that there's 980 million in open opportunities for this particular company. And we can see that based on opportunities by rep or by items. Well, let's go ahead and drop in another slicer. So we'll go to select the pivot table, insert slicer. And in this case, we want to bring in a slicer from the opportunities. And we want to look at the probability. So I'll go ahead and click on OK. And now we have a slicer where there's a 10% chance of closing all the way up through a 90% chance of closing. Let's take this slicer and relate it to both report connections. So in this case, we have a... So I think it would be good practice, right, to actually go ahead and name these pivot tables properly. So let's go to Pivot Table Analyze, and we'll call this Pivot Opportunity by Rep. And then we'll do something similar here, and this is just good practice, right? So Pivot Opportunity by Item. Now let's go ahead and take this slicer, go to Slicer, Report Connections, and it's going to make a lot more sense here. We can easily see which pivot tables we're associating it with. Okay, so now when I click on 90%, this is telling me that there's a 90% chance that we're going to close $67 million in business. These are the reps that are going to close it, and these are the items that are going to be sold. Now you might want to slice and dice this any number of ways. You might want to add in the quantity so that you could look and see the total quantity of each one of these items that you think you're going to sell in with a 90% certainty of closing. So that's really pretty cool. We're going to create another pivot table so we can look at our accounts receivable aging table. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Insert and then Pivot Table. So we have some outstanding invoices. We know we're going to want to look at the amount. Now, I did create a column inside of the NetSuite Save Search for aging. So I'm going to drop that in now. I'm going to go ahead and drag in aging as a column. And you'll see that we have 1 to 30, 31 to 60, etc. And now we can analyze this by customer. So let's go ahead and drop in a customer name as the row. And let's fix this formatting again, just a little nicer to look at. Okay, there we go. Now I don't like this order, right? So greater than 90 really should be all the way out. I want to make sure this sort order sticks. So I'm going to go ahead and go to sort. I'm going to go to more sort options. More options. And I'm going to say don't sort automatically every time the report is updated. I go ahead and click on OK and then OK again. And now when I refresh this, this sort order is going to remain the same. And let's just go ahead and make this look a little bit nicer. So let's go to report layout and we'll show this in tabular form. That'll help fix our labels and we can get rid of this. Just press, if I try to just get rid of that, it's going to give me an error. So I can just put a space there and that will make sense. I can type customer. Okay, so now we have a pivot table that is built off of the customers. You may also want to analyze this data by sales rep. Or you may want to add some slicers in there as well, something that's really easy to do. Also, drill down is supported. So when I go ahead and double click and drill down, it's actually bringing me to the transactions that were in that original data set. And then I can even use these hyperlinks and I can navigate directly back to the original NetSuite record. So here we have that original invoice of $10,400 with a due date of April 5th, 2021, which is 61 to 90 days past due based on today's date of June 15th. Let's go ahead and delete that sheet. We won't need that anymore. So I did have a formula that I used that actually looked at today's date minus due date, and then assigned it a value of 1 to 30, 31 to 60, etc. Now you could do all of that inside of Power Query as well. I have the formula embedded here directly inside of my NetSuite Save Search. I could just as easily recreate this formula using Power Query. I have it here because I also use this inside of Excel where I don't have access to Power Query. So let's go ahead and add a slicer also to this data. So I can come in and let's go ahead and click on the pivot table, and then we're going to go to Insert. We're going to add a slicer. So let's add a couple of slicers. We want to look at the subsidiaries. And we can also go ahead and create a slicer for the aging bucket itself. So let's go ahead and do that as well. So let's go to Insert. We'll add another slicer. For the aging bucket. Got it. So now we have a real quick way if we want to drill down onto all the invoices that are just 1 to 30 days old. I can click the slicer and there they are, 31 to 60. Boom, there they are, 61 to 90. There they are, greater than 90. I want to see everything. Just turn off the slicer. One subsidiary, there we go. Another subsidiary, etc. So slicers can really be friendly, regardless of whether you're working with Power Query, Power Pivot, or even a regular pivot table. Slicers are highly encouraged. So in the examples we just went through, you saw how quick and easy it is to use Power Query to bring your data, convert it into a model, and then run analysis on it, building Power Pivot tables, etc. One of the things you can do after that is really start to make your data look a little bit nicer and more user-friendly. So here's a few examples. Now, I'm not a report designer, but this is just a little bit of creativity that I use to hopefully give you a head start. So this is that same AR aging report we were just looking at, but I've broken the data down so we can quickly see in buckets right here where our aging is. We also have a slicer that if I click on, say, Tesla East, this is going to give us AR by customer and aging bucket. And we also have a related pivot table so I can look at it by account exec or sales rep. So let's go ahead and turn off this filter. In this case, I can see that there's one sales rep, Mary Redding, who has 1.5 million outstanding. Maybe I need to go ahead and take a closer look at her sales. This is the login audit trail that I mentioned. So in this particular case, we can see the total number of logins attempted by year, and we could even break that out and do it by quarter and month if we want to. A NetSuite admin might want to come in here and click on one of these slicers and see who has login failures. So you can see that Chris Corcoran had a number of login failures. Well, why did he have an issue? Well, token revoked, wrong password, wrong second factor authentication, etc. So which ones had token revoked? Pretty quick to go down and figure that out. So go ahead and turn off these filters. You can also add a filter for roles. So if you want to see who logged in with an admin role, there's a list of users that logged in with admin roles. So again, once you use your imagination and determine what data you want to see, and you build that saved search, put it into Excel, run it on a schedule, refresh it on demand, you can really get that data fast. Here's something a marketing department might want to look at. So this is a leads search. And now you can look and you can see your lead source by month, and you can see the status of each one of the leads, etc. Here's an opportunity search similar to the one that we built, but with a few more slicers, and it just looks a little bit nicer. So if I want to see, again, what opportunities are closing with a 90% certainty, here I can see here's the sales reps, here's the items that are very likely to sell, and in this case, they're only going to be sold in one subsidiary. Turn that filter off. You can look at forecast type, etc. Something similar for a sales order report. So sales by rep. You can also look then at sales by item. You can even add in filters if you want to look at certain sales by classifications. You can. Again, the use case is essentially unlimited. Just use your imagination to fit your unique business case. In conclusion, today we learned how to link multiple data sources, or NetSuite saved searches, together by building a data model within Power Query and linking those tables together by common key fields. We also learned how to automate and cleanse the data transformation. If you recall, we transformed that date field on the employee login search. And we protected our source data by keeping it separate from our analysis, thereby also making it easy to share the source data with other users. And because that source data is updated on a schedule via CloudExtend, it's really as up to date as you want it to be.
If you need further support, please visit our support site at support.cloudextend.io.